Good evening, everyone. Surprise live stream. I did mention yesterday that I'd be doing another live stream, but I didn't give you a specific time, so I figured I'd surprise you this evening. I hope you're doing well. I am feeling much better today than I was yesterday, so I appreciate all of the sweet comments that I received on my last video, and I'm glad that many of you found it to be helpful. I hope that the method of listing accomplishments helps you power through depression if you try to do it. So yeah. Um, I'm having some tea right now. So I was originally gonna have this live stream be the next episode of The Mundane Life of a Gay, but I decided otherwise because there is a topic that I want to talk about that's particularly important to me. And it's not a happy topic, obviously, but it's something that warrants conversation. As you know, I'm very, very serious about conversation, and there is cat hair flying in my camera. Sorry. But I live in a small town, okay? And there's approximately 2,000 people in this town, so when bad things happen, everybody finds out about it. It sends ripples through the community. It's a very difficult time when things like that happen. And to tell you what happened, I'm not going to give too many details because I'm respecting confidentiality and the privacy of the family. But there was a high schooler who took his life. I believe it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And or the day before yesterday. It was within the past couple days. A high schooler took his life, and it was pretty devastating. It was really, yeah, it was unexpected, obviously, as many suicides tend to be. And I've been just wrapping my mind around the fact that this person went to the same high school that I went to. And you've probably watched my Bullying Story of Survivor series. You know that I've gone through a lot of bullying and that I have had suicide attempts and suicidal tendencies my entire life. Well, since I was a teenager. And I can't help but to think that that could have easily been me. And what frustrates me the most, and that inspires the title of this video, what upsets me the most is all the comments that I see in support of the family are nothing but thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. And I completely understand the importance of having religion as a means of coping with difficult events. I think that is significant, of course, but what concerns me is that I know after people are done having their thoughts and prayers, after memorial services are done, people are just going to go back to their everyday life. People may still be mourning, but the important conversation that needs to happen is not going to happen, and that conversation is about mental health and suicide awareness. And I know that what I'm talking about is probably going to upset people, especially if anybody in the local community here ends up seeing this video. They're going to be upset because they're probably going to say, "Oh, Donnie, you're politicizing this tragedy. You are talking about it in the context of mental health and suicide awareness in order to get attention, to get views, to create a stir, to upset people." And I just want to tell people who would think that by thinking that, you are actively participating in the evasiveness that our culture seems to embody and utilize when it comes to talking about these types of serious subjects. People don't want to talk about it, so they will try their hardest to avoid it in every way by attempting to shame or guilt people who choose to talk about it. And I think that's why people are frequently afraid of talking about mental health awareness and suicide awareness. So, I guess my question to not only my community, but to our country, because this is clearly an issue in our country as well. When will thoughts and prayers be enough, and when will we actually start talking about the problem? When will we place greater priority on conversation as opposed to simply expressing sympathy? I don't know, maybe it's just me. I Sympathy, I understand, is a gesture that people put out there, especially if they're not really sure how to react to a situation. That's completely understandable. I've been there also. But sometimes sympathy in too great of quantities can end up being a destructive force because that means that the pain is too difficult for people to think about and reflect on, and that prevents them from actually talking about serious issues. Now, I can flat out tell you that since I live in a small town, the resources that we have here for mental health are unbelievably sparse. And that concerns me. I got my own, when I was in college, I got therapy, I got counseling, and I had to go to college to do it. I couldn't do it in my hometown. So that really worries me. And another thing that concerns me, and this is reflecting on the fact that this happened in my high school, you know that from the whole situation years ago with my friend Whitney, that bullying is a very common thing that happens at the school, and I unfortunately think that it still is overlooked. I don't know if this young kid took his life because he was being bullied at school or because he was feeling guilted in some way. I don't know if that is the case, but part of me wonders. Part of me is skeptical, like, could that be one of the causes? I mean, really, I can just reference personal experience. I've talked about bullying so much. I have. If you haven't watched my Bullying Story of Survival series, when you get some time, go watch it. It's an 8-part series, and I do talk about this at length. But when I went to high school, I was bullied every day, beaten up on a regular basis, and if I went to an adult or talked to anyone about it, nobody would listen. For example, I, at one point in time, went to my guidance counselor for help. I was like, "Hey, I'm being bullied." Well, I was a little bit more timid about it because I really didn't know how to articulate it. And the response I got was, "What are you doing to provoke other people? What are you doing to upset the bullies?" And to me, this mentality is so frustrating. It's all about victim blaming because people don't want to be bothered with thinking about something difficult or acknowledging the fact that something can go horribly wrong or that something is wrong. I don't understand how people can overlook that. I get the significance of mourning. I get that there needs to be time. But when the mourning is over, there needs to be conversation and there needs to be action. It incenses me thinking that a kid, I think he was like 14 or 15, a kid felt as though he didn't belong in this world anymore, and he took his life. It I know that dark place. and nobody should have to experience it, especially a 14-year-old kid. It's getting a little emotional. I apologize, my friends. Tiffany's here, Draco Fox is here, Ikane, my friend Cecilia, well, not friend, my cousin Cecilia is here. Chelsea B is here. Chelsea B states, there was a kid I went to school with that shot himself last year. He was 19. I didn't know him well, but he was the class clown and everybody loved him. Nobody knew what he was struggling with. I'm sorry, Chelsea, that happened. It's really alarming when something hits close to home like that, isn't it? My friend Tiffany Cups is here. Hey, love you, girl. Hey, Connie, Ken. Okay, Ken. Now we have a name that I can pronounce. So, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer and talk about these things, but then again, me thinking that is the guilt that culture places on me and many for even wanting to talk about this issue. And it does get a lot of reactions from people. People get upset. People think that, I'm being dramatic or um, unreasonable. But truthfully, when it comes to conversations about unreasonable, I think it's unreasonable to accept that a 14-year-old chose to take his life for various reasons. I think that's unreasonable. And I think what's just as unreasonable are the people who refuse to acknowledge that there is a mental health problem. That is unreasonable. I don't know if it probably has a lot to do with lack of education, maybe. People aren't educated enough when it comes to um, talking about mental health. I mean, that could very well be the case. So, I love you, Cecilia. You're amazing. Tiffany Gray says, this also shows that kids are not being heard because they're not adults and therefore they're not taken seriously. It goes back to the unbelievably stupid mentality that children should be seen and not heard. I completely 5,000,000% agree with that. And see, that's in a way what I experienced. People didn't want to bother with it, so they were just like, well, what are you doing to provoke it? Just ignore them, don't talk to them, avoid them, like that works. Or stand up for yourself. That doesn't even work all the time either. And because I could not get any help from adults, I chose to simply not say anything. I didn't say anything to my parents because I was afraid of coming out. I was afraid of them knowing that I was being made fun of for being gay. That was a slightly different situation. Now that I look back on it, I do wish I would have told my parents a little bit more about the bullying that I went through, but I had my reasons back then for not saying anything. But I believed and felt that my teachers, and some of them did care. I'm not going to say that none of them did, but I had some teachers and some school staff and administration who looked the other way and just dismissed me as being overdramatic. That I get very insecure about overdramaticness because of that. But I now know that when I have that insecurity, I need to think to myself, why is that insecurity there? I need to do exactly the opposite of what that insecurity wants me to do or tells me to do. Lamar Townsend Tarot says, hi, Donnie, I'm subscribed to you and I love your channel and content. Thank you so much for that, Lamar. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here. Ken says America promotes that mental illness is taboo and those that might have it should be avoided. Yes, I completely agree. And Tiffany says it makes me sick how a lot of adults treat children like they have no voice. Any adult that silences a child should be ashamed of themselves. And see, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Tiffany, because what many people don't realize is that when people show kids how to be ashamed in silence, when they show other kids how to silence others, that is a learned experience and that is perpetuated. And I really think that has a lot to do with why mental illness is so rampant, why depression is so rampant, why suicidal tendencies are so rampant. And in some ways, I think that's also why gun violence is rampant because a lot of hate, not a lot, all hate is a learned experience. It's a learned experience. The Velvet Rage by Alan Downs, Lamar. I'll have to give that a read. It sounds kind of familiar. I may have read bits and pieces of it, but I'll have to go research that. Yes, Tiffany, you should totally make a video about this. I think that would be awesome. But I don't know. I just felt the need to discuss this situation because I'm really tired of this hitting so close to home all the time. And see, the thing is, though, even if it didn't hit close to home, I would still be tired of it. But the fact that over the past year, I have lost two significant people in my life to suicide, and then this happened, and I believe not long ago there was another kid that took his life locally. It just speaks to the underlying problem that exists. And my question to my town is, well, when are you going to stop your thoughts and prayers and when are we going to talk about this? Because I really think that this area could improve a lot when it comes to talking about difficult issues. Not to mention, there is a lot of learning this area could do when it comes to not ostracizing, marginalizing, and bullying people, because bullying is quite rampant. It's quite rampant. But yeah. So, what do you guys want to talk about? Do you guys want to talk about anything? Pretty much have given my 2 cents on that issue. Was my 2 cents. Um, So, okay, going back and talking about the last couple videos, I already mentioned the last one that I did about depression, but I want to also talk about the grinder video that I made a couple of videos ago. I, of course, received some negative feedback on it from other LGBT people. People were saying that, oh, well, why are you using Grinder, like, to meet people? Like, why are, like, that's your only way of meeting people, and you're ridiculous, and yada, yada, yada. And, basically, again, I was made to believe that I was, well, they tried to make me believe that I was being overdramatic. And again, that speaks to that underlying problem of people wanting to evade difficult subjects. And they evade those difficult subjects, again, by shaming, guilting, and trying to convince people that they are just being silly or overdramatic when talking about those issues. So that's that just is another example, let's just say. Gray Red says, "Hi Donny, love your content. My suicidal nature started from my homophobic family. I feel as though people don't realize that kids pick up on what is considered not normal." I completely agree with that, 100%. Um, Kids are very perceptive. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I could always determine when people were being insidious or when people were talking about me or looking at me, and that becomes, in a way, something that we, especially if we've suffered from it, that's something that we keep the rest of our lives, because I still do that. I'm sorry that you also struggle with suicidal nature, but Gray, I am very happy that you're here. I'm glad that you have held on. Lamar, or my friend Elena. Elena, I love you. Elena's here. She said that my cousin knew him. He was such a nice kid. It just breaks my heart. And see, that's, well, my heart goes out to your cousin and you as well, Elena. Like, I unfortunately, I think I may have met him once at the previous job where I used to work, because I think the family used to go out there, but I never really knew him that well. And it just makes me sad to think of how close to home this hits. Lamar says Grindr is the worst. I am not surprised by the comments you got. I've gotten similar comments. I no longer use the app. You were right. It is one of the only reliable apps for gay men. And I think this person, like, that mentioned, that was being actively negative toward me about it, this person didn't live in a small rural community, at least to my knowledge, so that kind of changed the context a little bit. People don't realize that in the rural areas, sometimes that is the only way to actually meet people. Trust me, you're not going to go out to a bar up here in northern Michigan and encounter a bunch of gays. That's not going to happen. If anything, I may encounter fisticuffs or, a beer mug thrown at me or whatever. Beer is in mugs, right? Beer mug? Beer glass? Beer mug? Not very good. I'm more of a wine person. Don't know my beer glassware. My Tiffany Gray says, to this day, I'm very insecure about how I respond to things because so many people have told me and still tell me that I'm overdramatic and too sensitive. Well, Tiffany, my dear, you know that you have one friend who will not do that to you. Ken says, and blah, 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 blah. I am sorry, I cannot speak tonight. Ken says that most towns don't have places where gay guys can meet in a positive, welcoming environment, so the online environment is much safer. Like, if you go to bigger places, usually there are, like, safe areas, like, clubs or bars, but up here, certainly not, for sure. Chelsea, I agree that the worst thing that a person can say to somebody is that they're being overdramatic. Definitely. Dahlia, it's good to see you. I You are correct, Dahlia, in the fact that Grindr is largely used as a hookup app. There are a lot of people, though, who do meet partners on there, because dating websites have kind of taken a back seat. But now, like, that is like Grindr has more options that, like, explain, like, oh, well, what are you looking for? Are you looking for just a hookup, or are you looking for a relationship? You can clarify that type of thing. Oh, Cecilia. I'm thankful I feel deeply too. It's funny, I've been told since I was a kid that because I am a man, that means that I shouldn't feel deeply, or at least I shouldn't express those deep feelings, and that upsets me quite a bit. Um, that really upsets me because in my eyes, just because I am male, that doesn't mean that I'm not capable of experiencing the same depth other people are. I feel with the same intensity as everyone else. It's just viewed socially unacceptable for us to do that. And see, that concerns me about this boy that took his life. My worry is, was he ever made to feel that he couldn't express himself or be emotional? Because the whole man up mentality, that tends to be very toxic. Hi, little beauty. It's good to see you. Lamar, thank you for saying that. Lamar said, "I believe your channel will blow up. Keep doing what you are doing." I mean, my goal isn't for it to blow up, but if I do reach more people and if I can make more of a difference with people, then that will help me feel as though I'm accomplishing even more. Like, I don't think I've really told you guys, I mean, I've mentioned this, but YouTube is kind of my coping for a lot of the difficult things like depression and suicidal thoughts that I go through, because in knowing that I am making a difference, that is giving me one extra thing to hold on to in this life. And I think that's something very meaningful. And that's something that I try to get people to do. Like I try to tell them, share your story because you may never know who your story will impact for sure. Oh, I really appreciate you guys being here. If nobody came to the live streams, I'd still do them. I would just be talking to myself. But it's nice to know that I'm not talking to myself. And Lamar, I admire your bravery as well. I do very much. See, that's what's scary about talking about suicidal thoughts and all of this type of conversation because you don't know the reactions you're going to get from people. People may look at you and be like, "Oh God, this person's clearly insane," or they may completely treat you in a different way. I remember I lost friends over the fact that I had suicidal thoughts because they didn't want to deal with me. They thought I was being overdramatic. Have a good night, Chelsea. Thank you for joining us. Little Beauty, you can share your story on YouTube. Do you do videos by any chance? If you do videos and you do talk about this type of thing, please let me know because I mean, I would support you for sure. I like to encourage people in their endeavors, so definitely let me know. I'm not going to be on very much longer because I have to finish reading a novel, then I have to go to bed because I have to get up early for school. But um, to conclude what I've been talking about this evening, about this young boy, my heart does go out to the family and the friends, and I do care about their healing process, and I care about the community's healing process. But the community needs to remember that there is a larger problem at work. There is a larger problem, and that problem needs to be addressed. And to any of you who still struggle with suicidal thoughts, tendencies, or attempts, I hope no attempts. But for those of you who still struggle with these things, know that you are cared about. I care about you. And the world needs you. There are people out there who may need your story. And I will quote again what I've quoted for years. This is what my friend Cindy, or Stream of Awareness, would tell me when we would talk years and years ago when I was suicidal in high school. She would tell me, Donnie, remember all that you have been holding on to and keep holding on because of those things. And to this day, I tell myself that. And it really helps a lot. Drago Vox, if you do your own series, please let me know because I would be happy to put your stuff out there too. Gonna look at a few more comments and then I'll probably get going here. Tiffany says, last year when I told my granddad about my suicide attempts in the past, he freaked out and said that if I did it, it would have caused the death of him and my grandmother. That still hurts me today. Knowing, like, I really, whenever I have suicidal thoughts, I also think about how it would affect the people around me, because you don't really consciously think about it, but there are people who do depend on you, and the loss of your life may destroy their lives completely, and I don't want to cause harm to others, and that's one thing that helps remind me to not take that chance. Thank you, Lamar. You're gonna make me cry. He said, "You are needed in this world, Donnie." Thank you. All of you are too. I love doing live streams now. We need to do this more. Anyway, my friends, thank you for listening to me talk for 30 minutes about this topic that isn't an easy topic to discuss. If you are still struggling with these thoughts, keep holding on. Keep holding on, okay? I know every day can feel like traversing a mountain, but you're not alone. If you feel that you need a resource, that you need to talk to somebody about your thoughts, please don't hesitate to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Its number is 1-800-273-8255. And the link and the phone number are also down in the description section below. I have utilized this resource before. I know other people who have also utilized this resource. It's very useful. Sometimes when you're in that headspace, sometimes it's just good to have someone listen to you. And that act in of itself may save a life. So anyway, I love you guys. I hope you have a good night, and I'll have a new video coming within the next couple of days. Talk to you later.